All right, we are on the last day of CPAC, and I have David Keene and Kane Robinson, both of the NRA. Gentlemen, what do you think of CPAC this year?
I think it's been great. From somebody who's a former president of the NRA, and Kane is the same, it was nice to see a president of the United States get up on stage and say, oh, by the way, I'm going to protect the Second Amendment. That wasn't even on my list they gave me.
He just leads right off with things like that, and he's the real deal. And I think he's going down the list of things that he promised, and he's doing them. And you know, everybody's talking about what he says about the press, but frankly, it's what we've all been saying about the press for as long as I've been involved in this movement since the 60s.
As someone who has sat in press conferences in the room with the press, I can name the members of the press I really like and trust on one hand off the top of my head, to be honest. It's kind of sad, but I don't think what he's saying is inaccurate at all. And I can tell you a story about that later once we're done. But I understand that you have a book out that we should know about.
My book is on the Second Amendment, on the efforts of people to ban firearms ownership and self-defense in this country. It's called Shall Not Be Infringed. It's about the Second Amendment and about the threats that we face going forward, even with the election of a president like Donald Trump. To use language that the left doesn't like, we dodged a real bullet last November, because if Mrs. Clinton had been elected president, the Second Amendment would be something we'd see in our rearview mirror. But the threat continues, and I've always said, I know Kane shares this view, the worst mistake you can make in politics or in life is to mistake winning a battle for winning the war.
You know, I was thinking the other day about the book, and when you're not here, how can you get one when you're not here at this?
Well, you can do it in three ways. You can go to the NRA store online, you can go to davidakeen.com, or if all else fails, you can go to Amazon.
No, is that in South America?
So a lot of and the rain, and as you said that the rainbow just appeared in the sky behind you. If that's not an endorsement, I'd like to know what is. And since you're both with the NRA, I want to ask you this question. Last night I was holding what we called the Tech Guys Midnight Court. I had my computer set up and we took questions, and I was with a group of liberals out there from the other convention that was here, who I was sparring with for quite a while. And one of the things I don't understand concerning their position on the Second Amendment is the inner cities generally vote Democrat, and the people who are most harmed by illegal guns are people, the Democrat voters, who could protect themselves if they could carry legally, but are prevented to do so by the party they support.
You know, it's interesting because sometimes people that are outside the box think of things that you don't think about when you're inside the box. I was addressing students at a law school on the Second Amendment recently, and a young black law student from one of our major cities raised her hand and said, I have a question. And during the Obama administration, you remember the Justice Department developed this theory of what they call disparate impact, where if a law has impact in denying rights to minorities, then that law is unconstitutional. And she said, explain this to me. She said, if the major victims of crime who need to defend themselves are in the inner cities, and the places where gun rights are most restricted are in the inner cities, isn't that unconstitutional? And I hadn't thought of it that way, but if
That's
you wanted
brilliant.
to use liberal legal reasoning, that would be true, because those are the people who need it. You know, when Otis McDonald, who was the plaintiff in what's known as the McDonald case that applied gun rights to the states, Otis McDonald was a black man from Chicago, son of sharecroppers, moved to Chicago, raised a family, bought a house, and his neighborhood went to hell. And he wanted to defend himself because it was gangbangers and the like all the time. The city said no. He won that case, and Mayor Emanuel said, well, it's not going to have any impact because people here aren't going to look to guns for self-protection. A year later, I asked a reporter at our paper, I want to know how many applications there are in Chicago for permission to get a gun for self-protection. 69,000. And most of them from neighborhoods just like the one that Otis McDonald was living in.
And I think that really speaks a lot about the right. And it seems to me that the people who tend to attack the right to arm oneself are the people who have bodyguards. who are paying other people to carry their guns for you. And I'm reminded of that line from the movie El Dorado when John Wayne declines to work for Edward Asner, a big liberal who's playing the villain in this, saying, I noticed you don't carry a gun, so you have it hired out. And that's really what the left has become with this. They hire out protection, and they expect everyone else to hire out protection too, regardless of what they have.
Gated communities, there are all kind of ways of doing it, about not associating with places where there could be crime, about avoiding them, and so it doesn't affect it. Some of this is even beyond that, though. It's simply their side to be opposed to guns. You could give them every fact in the world, and some of them, it wouldn't make the least difference.
It's a quasi-religious kind of thing. You know, with my book, John Bolton, the former UN ambassador, wrote the foreword, and he said, in his mind, what the anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment movement is very much like the unilateral disarmament movement of the 60s. People who felt, as an article of faith, that if the United States just gave up its weapons, the world would be a better place because other countries would do the same, and then we'd live in an international utopia. That hasn't worked very well. And the fact that somebody doesn't have a gun who is in fact a thug who wants to rob you is not going to prevent him from robbing you. It may prevent you from defending yourself, but it's not going to change his nature.
And the fact, I think that's so self-evident, and the history of the country has shown this for for decades and decades and decades. Before then, it's as if our liberal friends think that they are the only enlightened people in history on this kind of thing.
Well, they've always viewed themselves that way.
Well, gentlemen, the book again, It Shall Not Be Infringed, and where can it be found again?
It can be found at the NRA store online. It can be found at my website, www.davidakeen.com. or at Amazon.
And Mr. Robinson, do you do any writing? And if so, where can we find your writing and opinion?
I haven't done any public writing. I do a lot of other writing, but you wouldn't want to read it. I'm just terrible.
Oh, so nothing on like Doctor Who or anything other than that. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of CPAC.
Thanks for having us.